Hey Zen fan. So I think I've made a wee bit of a mistake. As some of you may have seen recently, I put out a YouTube short. I don't do very many of them. I'm not so keen on the format, but they can be useful. Within that particular YouTube short, I backed up Lady Decade against what I believed at the time to be a real cause. Now I'm having doubts, severe doubts. Now, I invite any and all parties to give me information either side of this particular issue, especially Lady Decade and, of course, Funky Spectrum, whom this video concerns. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? Okay, so not very many days ago, Lady Decade came out quite late in the evening, and I was, getting fairly close to going to bed. I was giving a little bit of extra stay up just because I could. I had my headset on. I thought, okay, I've played enough. I'm going to watch a couple of YouTube videos, chill out, and go to bed. Except this video came on. And I like Lady Decade's work. I have found many of her documentaries to be super informative. She has a pleasing manner on screen. I actually prefer her work to her husband, who is of course Mr. Top Hat Gaming. And don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed Top Hat Gaming's content in the past, and I will probably enjoy some more of it in the future. But I prefer Lady Decade's content. She has a good energy on screen, and she seems to know what she's talking about. At least she gives that air of knowing what she's talking about. Whether or not she actually does, I cannot prove one way or the other, but I do like the content. So when she came on the screen with no flashbangery, no green screen or anything else, just her standing in front of her part of her gaming wall, claiming that somebody had sent her a letter and it was kind of a scary legal letter. I sympathise with that. I myself have received letters in the past that, because I don't fully understand the implications and can't quite make head nor tails of them, that I too have found letters in the past that I don't fully understand to be scary. But that's more like my dyslexia. Now, whether or not Lady Decade is dyslexic, I cannot say. She has not said one way or the other upon this issue. But I know for myself that I have, felt fear when I've received a seriously toned letter, from, say, the council or, from a billing company or something, that say, you owe us this money, and, you are paralysed by that for a little bit because you don't know A, what you've done, B, what you can do to fix it. And there is that slight fight or flight, aspect to such a fear moment of, you've got this important thing through the post. It's not an email, it's something that's physical, it's come through the post, and that can be, worrisome. So I understood her when she was going, I'm afraid, I'm scared, what's going on? Is this going to kill my channel? And if you're a YouTuber, regardless on what kind of content you've made, no matter if it's completely frivolous, you've put the work in. You have, made strides to make the best content you can. You're trying to do whatever editing you can, whatever kind of sound work you can, whatever effects you can, depending on what you want to do in that content. I mean, I know for myself, for this channel, over the years that I've been running it, I have done everything I can to make it as good as I can with the limited equipment and resources I have. I mean, I recently, as you know, some of you in the Zen family who've been here a while, I recently got a Blue Yeti mic donated to me by one of you wonderful Zen fam, which I am eternally thankful for, because now, thankfully, I have decent sound. I'm still experimenting with the sound mix of it, but it's definitely better than what I had before, when what I had, the previous mic, was the mic inside the DualSense, and before that was a second-hand SingStar mic that promptly broke down. And I could go back and back of various mics I've had that have all been on one level or another poo. Just the nature of the game. Anyway, so when it came to this letter part of Lady Decade's video, I understood that concept of a letter being scary and making you feel uncertain about what's going on and what could possibly happen. However, Spectrum himself said some things in his video, looking at the Lady Decade video, that gave me cause for concern. First of all, the fact that she kept on doubling back on the same point. Also the way that she kind of, how do I put this? She kept stopping and starting the video as if she needed time to sort of hype herself up and get into it. Now this could be, I'm not saying it is, but could be, she genuinely did need to take a break, recompose herself and come back. But it didn't seem quite right. However, Funky Spectrum did say in his video that to pay this £470 for the copyright abuse that did take place, that she would very easily be able to sell some of the stuff behind her. Which is essentially true. She could have sold that stuff, but then, that's her stuff. She obviously, doesn't want to part with it, because as you can quite clearly see whenever you look at Lady Decade's videos and she's standing in front of her game wall, that's her collection. It's hard to part with something like that on an emotional level. And considering that at that point she wasn't thinking, to her words, and clearly, because she was, to her mind, or at least assertion in her video, distressed, that I doubt the idea of I'll sell all these games, I'll sell a bunch of these games and or gaming equipment to get the money together to pay back this guy, probably never floated through her head. Because, I don't think she's come from a background that does that. She's always sounded kind of middle class to me. Now me personally, back in the 90s, when I got my first flat, I by necessity had to sell pretty much everything I owned to keep my flat going at one point. And there's a lot of things I don't own anymore, and I'll never own again. But it was either that or become homeless, so I did what I had to do. But not everybody can make that kind of decision. It's a hard place to put yourself in. I know, I've been there, I've done it. To sell the things you love, it's not an easy thing to do. It sounds simple on paper, but psychologically, it's not an easy thing by any stretch of the imagination. So I can see why she never floated the idea of selling the stuff, and to her, as a content creator with a Patreon and a sympathetic, following, this, the only course of action she really truly had to get together some money quick was to ask her patrons, which I can see the logical leap she took to get there. But was that logical leap really the best thing to do? Now, in all actuality, apparently, that goal of 500 quid, even though the goal was actually £470 apparently, for the legal bill, was quickly achieved and surpassed. Now, in a perfect world, if that money was, to paid for this legal expense, and that money was exceeded, you would hope that exceeded level of exceeded funds would make its way to a good cause. I don't know, like a local food bank or a hospice charity, or even, I don't know, for a local school's breakfast program, something of that nature, something where the extra money could do some good, and that the goodwill of people could be passed on to be goodwill for other people. Obviously I'm talking perfect world scenarios, and we do not live in a perfect world. I recognise this all too readily. So, with that in mind, it then comes to be the case that sort of like, okay, so you could have sold the games or gaming equipment and got the money and not had to put the thing up on Patreon. But then apparently, even after the Patreon had been paid, from what I've been hearing, Jeremy from the Quartering decided he would pony up the cash and pay the legal bill straight out. However, this may have just been a cynical move by Jeremy from the Quartering to improve his public image. Let's face it, on Richard Review Tech USA's channel, and some other channels, and quite frankly just by his own hand, his image has taken a battering, to say the least. I mean, he's not done and said some of the most savvy things you can, and he has strayed somewhat to the dark side a few times, and constantly going on about woke culture and stuff, and there's a concern for that, obviously. There's always a case that trying to do the right thing, you can push too far into doing the right thing and end up excluding other people as well when you're trying to do the right thing. Doing the right thing but in the wrong way. We're humans, we screw up, that's how it goes. But getting back to the legal letter that was sent. The legal letter that was sent wasn't actually by the person in the photograph that Lady Decade had used in the video. The photo that was used in the video was taken by a photographer. The photographer himself owned the rights to that photo. And the photo that they used from the internet, by and large, a lot of photos on the internet are fair use, uncopyrighted material that you can use quite happily. However, in this particular instance, this particular photo was a piece of copyrighted work, which in itself presents a problem for Top Hat Gaming and Lady Decade, because a short while afterwards, the creator, about a year or so afterwards, the creator of the photo found out that his work had been used, and apparently this creator's work has been used by numerous people numerous times, and the guy's losing out. He's trying to make his money, he's trying to do his living with his content, much the same as Lady Decade and Top Hat Gamer are with their content. They're trying to make a living. So when he saw them making a living of what he does to make a living and not paying him and not crediting him, of course it was only logical that he would indeed send legal notice to them through their brand manager. Now, for a channel the size of Lady Decade's, and even combine it with the size of Top Hat Gaming's channel, they seem a bit small to have something like that, especially when they claim that they're not a business and they're not registered with Companies House. So if you're not registered with Companies House and you're claiming to not be a business, the idea that you need a brand manager seems a bit highfalutin and maybe, I don't know, like overkill or something. I mean, I do not have a brand manager. I'm a tiny little channel. I'm barely scraping close to 500 subscribers after like nearly 9 years of work on YouTube, and I doubt I'll ever have one. Even if I got to good numbers, like say I got to 2k, which is the eventual goal. I'd like to someday to get to a couple of k worth of subscribers. That would be a nice place to be. But I doubt I would ever spend the money for a brand manager, because working your brand, I've done a lot of work that myself. I mean, you look at the banner image to this channel when you're on the main page. I did that. I made that. And my avatar with me with the Pulse headphones on that was a derivation of my original image, which some of you older Zen Fam members may remember. Me with the original Pulse headphones, Pulse Platinum headphones on, and the sharpshooter, and me stood in front of a nondescript background. And now it's a cut-out version of me against a repeating background of my logo with my logo t-shirt that I wear to conventions. When I get to go to conventions. Please God, somebody make a video game convention in Scotland that replaces Resonate. Please. I want to get involved if you do. Okay? Hit your boy up. Anyway, so she's crying and she's going through all kinds of emotions on screen, and Spectrum is basically going like, oh, look at all these signs of, you know, of not being completely straight with people, gritting of teeth, flaring of nostrils, wringing of hands. And although some of these signs are most definitely not good, and they, you know, lean towards the idea that she could have been putting it on and, you know, playing it up. Although this claim did come through, and although this claim could be said to be scary, as I've already specified as why such claims and letters can be scary, you know, especially if you don't have a legal background. You know, you get a legal letter and you're like, legal letter, you know? It makes you take a step back. So we have to consider all these factors together. Was Lady Decade, you know, guilty of what this bloke said she was? Now, technically, yes. She did take an image and use it in a video that technically the image had nothing to do with the rest of the video. And she didn't credit the guy with the video. She didn't even seek permission from the guy for the image. However, it does have to be said that if you're a small YouTuber and you try to ask anybody for permission for something, you just get lost in the email shuffle. There's been a great many times I've put in for permission to get a thing, and unless it's another YouTuber of a similar level to me, or maybe just a teensy bit higher, I don't get a response, which then means I don't use the thing because I can't, unless it's like a piece of footage, and then I do my best to make sure it works within the confines of fair use, or I will change the image enough so that it becomes a different work. You know, I'll cut the sound out of it, I'll change its sizing, you know, I'm over the top of it, there are graphics over the top of it, like my spinning things and drop things that you see down the side at the early part of the video, you know. And I do my best to make sure it comes across as reference, you know, it's so you can know what I'm talking about. When I green screen things here, in a video where I'm talking about a subject matter, if I show the thing of the subject matter here, then it's to do with what I'm talking about, and I'm in front of it most of the time, so I suitably changed, I've altered the image, I've altered the video, you know, I have made it into a different work, which is part of what fair use is about. It's not like, well, I'll just slap this photo up in the middle of a video. If the video is, say, 16.5 minutes long, and I've taken, you know, a copyrighted photograph, and I've stuck it, say, at like the 10-minute 3-second mark, and I put it up for 2.5 seconds, just as a reference, say, and this bloke, blah, 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 blah. You know? Yes, technically you can do that. However, because that picture belongs to him, he can go, that's my picture you used, you've no asked, you've no paid, you've no done nothing, I demand reimbursement. And considering this guy has had a lot of fights with this particular image and some of his other images, you know, apparently he is on a bunch of copyright protection websites and their forums, and other people who have copyrighted work who seek to get reimbursement for their copywritten work back from content creators who have a more lax attitude to what and where and how they use copywritten works. You know, they lauded him as someone that's, you know, fighting their corner and doing good for the cause. So there's all these things flying back and forth. However, I do have to say that I'm not entirely behind Funky Spectrum. Point one, he was extraordinarily rude and xenophobic against my country and my countrymen. So that does not fly, sir. As a proud Scotsman, I find your attitudes towards Scotland to be offensive at the very least. I mean, the way you spoke about my home, that just will not do. That does not sit right. And it's like, and quite frankly, you're just helping making the case for independence, buddy, because Scotland's fed up of it and we want out. But politics aside, you then, decided that some of the language you chose in your video, I mean, you kept dropping C-bombs, and I understood you were angry, but like, you're only doing yourself damage in against the YouTube machine and in your own SEO, by continually swearing and dropping C-bombs and effing and blinding. I mean, that's your choice. I mean, I love Alpha Omega Sin for that. I love, how he's unfiltered, but your sheer level of vitriol, it was unbecoming. And you sound like a guy with an education. You sound like a guy that really cares. And I just personally think that from what little I've seen of your content this far, you could do better, mate. But if there's one thing that I really couldn't take from you, was the fact that you stood up for Donald Trump. Dude, seriously, you're going to stick up for the orangutan of the insurrection, the tiny hand misogynistic, homophobic, transphobe, lying words I'm not going to say on this channel for fear of, cancellation, but Trump's not a good guy. Very, very far from it. And you defending Trump when he spoke out against someone who is quite clearly disabled and made fun of that disability, and you tried to rationalize that? Dude, seriously, have a word with yourself. But I understand that, apparently, according to you, Top Hat Gamer had dissed you in the past and treated you in a most disrespectful manner, and I understand that and I sympathise with that. But if you're going to, have a counterclaim against somebody else, especially in social media terms, you have to come across as clear, calm-headed and logical. Otherwise, you undermine your own argument, you undermine your own cause. And anything you say after you've spoken in such a manner, comes across as less serious and less professional and less credible. So, although I enjoy both Lady Decade and I'm quite enjoying so far what I've seen from the bulk of the standard content from Funky Spectrum, neither of you guys is even close to perfect. But I will continue to watch both channels. However, Lady Decade, you are on thin ice. It's quite clear that you have abused your position as a content creator with a large audience. And you can't get away with that. I'm sorry, you can't. Now, admittedly, Spectrum, you spoke in deeply unflattering terms about the physical appearance of Lady Decade, which had no bearing on the case you were building against her and her use of intellectual properties from other people. So, although you were saying this stuff, you devalued your points by continually talking about her physical attributes. And I have to say this, right? As someone that's been watching Lady Decade for a wee while, I don't give a monkey's what she looks like. I care about the data I receive from the video. You claim that all the people, or a large proportion at least, of the people that watch her video are guys where they're meeting two veg out, having fun watching the video. I'm obviously having to be careful how I phrase this because I do have a lot of younger viewers. So, you're saying that there are other men out there who are having a different type of fun with her videos. And that is probably true, but that is true across the board, inside and outside of YouTube. There are always going to be people who do things like that, regardless. And everybody's got a thing, you know, everybody. So that point doesn't really make any particular sense or have any relevance or hold any level of salient information as regards the points you were making about the content violation and, you know, the copyright strike given to Lady Decade, deservedly so. You know, so whilst I support your assertion that she did, you know, flout copyright law, you yourself did not comport the video breaking down what she did wrong and why she did it wrong in a manner that I can fully get behind. Now, I do offer myself as mediator. If perhaps the two of you want to go through me and maybe talk this out and figure out your differences and maybe not snipe and not have an issue with each other and maybe, you know, figure out where it went wrong, because apparently at some point Spectrum thought he had a good relationship with Top Hat Gamer, and I'm guessing Top Hat Gamer must have also felt that as well, and then he turned around and started speaking in an uncomplimentary manner about Spectrum. And considering Spectrum himself has said that he has a life-ending condition and he's in a wheelchair, perhaps it would be best if you, Top Hat, and perhaps Lady Decade as well, would move past whatever disagreement has taken you to this place and try and fix things up before Spectrum passes beyond. And if you want a third party to mediate between you, I'll offer that, you know. I mean, I'm only just a tiny little YouTuber under 500 subscribers, but I like to think I've got a reasonably calm head and, you know, I'm a good listener. I try, you know, and I've got a bit of free time at the moment, so, you know, if I can help you guys, you know, sort of move past this with each other, then that's cool. I get to do something good, you know. It's like I try to, you know, do good things with these platforms, you know. I speak out against injustices. I don't take part in the console wars, you know, and I try and push forward and be a positive force. But if I can't help you guys, then I would ask that you don't air your dirty laundry on YouTube. We've got enough drama channels as it is. So to round it all out, I understood where Lady Decade was coming from, but I think she overplayed her case. You caught that. You shone a light on how it was actually her fault. So she should definitely have done what she can to pay the money off. That money has now been paid off through by either Patreon or allegedly Jeremy from the Quartering. So she needs to acknowledge that in a future video, publicly, a video just about acknowledging that and saying thank you to either Jeremy from the Quartering and or the Patreons who contributed to helping her. She needs to issue a public apology to the photographer for using the copyrighted work, and basically from this point forward she has to make damn sure that when she uses a source, it's either a source that doesn't mind that is put up as a non-copyrighted material or seeks permission first. Now yes, this will slow down production, but in reality, Lady Decade, do you want to go through this nonsense again? I think you probably don't. Now this has been a very long video, but this needed to be broken down and said. I made a mistake in jumping forth and seeing the video and going, hey, I like this creator, I'm going to speak up for them. And, you know, I did that. That was my mistake. I own that. I put my hand up to that. I've since seen some other videos, like the ones I've seen from Funky Spectrum, saying, oh, Lady Decade is not as clean as you think. She's done this, she's done this, she's done this. And her husband's done this, this and this. And together they've done these things as well. So, you know, I'm not going to talk about the part where she put her kids in the video, because that was obviously a desperation move. Now, some people will say that was a move of like cold calculated, I'm going to use my kids as part of the, you know, emotional weapon. That's up for debate. I'm not going to touch that, you know, because as a YouTuber, I very, very seldom put my son in a video. There's like possibly 2 videos where my kid has been in and he's been in on the video. He's been an active participant, you know. It's like one video from way back where like I was talking about various pieces of PlayStation peripherals and such, and the upgrades to them, and he was passing it to me off camera, and then he came on and sort of like jumped about all excited because he helped his dad out with a video and he wanted to do that, you know. And the other one where just a wee while ago where we had the discussion about what it is for a 12-year-old to be a gamer as a 47-year-old to be a gamer, and where we both stand and what we both see and what we both experience. And hopefully at some point we'll do that again, but on a different subject matter, because he's keen to do it and as am I, because I had a whale of time. I love my boy. But you know, he's 12, he's cognizant of these decisions, he can make these decisions. So putting your children on like that, you could very well be accused of weaponizing your children, you know, as emotional guilt machines, you know, to try and like wangle your way out of a legal screw up, which I can understand you're doing if you are indeed coming from a position of scared and panicked, you know, and emotionally sort of disheveled because you've never experienced something like this, and a new experience can be a scary experience, especially when the law is involved. So I get that. But you have to understand, now that you've gone through that and it's happened, how people are going to look upon that from this point forward, and they're not going to treat it as something that you should have done. They're going to treat it as something that you shouldn't have done, but hindsight's 2020, innit? I mean, Lord knows I've made my share of boners. I've done some stupid things in my life, and probably some very stupid things on this channel. There's probably things I've forgotten about that I've said and done here that I wish I hadn't. So don't delete the video, Lady Decade, but do acknowledge what you've done and acknowledge the people that helped you get out from the mess you made from what you did. And I think if you do that, that will go a long way to appeasing the community, you know. And I like to think people on the whole are relatively charitable. If you put your hand up and go, yeah, that was my bad, people will generally go, you know what, they admit to that. Part of the reason why I like Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister, as opposed to most other politicians, whenever she's you know, on TV and someone's going, First Minister, you've made this mistake, she owns it. And I dig that. You don't get that from many other politicians. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen it from any politicians apart from maybe Charles Kennedy. Now I'm getting into Scottish politics and stuff, and I don't need to not do that here. Okay, so please guys, I hope you've made it this far in the video. If you have, down in the comment section, type the words fish finger sandwich. Just, you know, to confuse people that haven't got this far in the video. And so I know you got that far. And if you got this far and you have typed fish finger sandwich, then please, in the same comment or in another comment if you like, tell me your point of view, your focus on this, what you think. Because I'm really interested to know what the community thinks of this whole situation. And do please, I will link the 2 videos in the description. The video from Lady Decade, my short defending Lady Decade, mistakenly so, and the main video that Funky Spectrum put up decrying what she done. Now I will warn you now, the video from Spectrum is over 2 hours, but he does do a big time breakdown of what she says and how she says it and her body language, and he does do a little bit of armchair psychology. But it is a worthwhile watch. It's a long watch, but it is a worthwhile watch. I don't think there's much more I can say in this apart from please comment and normal service will be resumed in the next video, where hopefully I get to talk about something a bit more fun. Okay guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. You look after each other out there. Hashtag support Scottish YouTubers. And of course, as always, aye, nae bother.